Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Chase Jarvis. Welcome to another episode of the Chase Jarvis Live Show here on CreativeLive. This is where I sit down with the world's top creatives, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders and unpack actionable insights with the goal of helping you live your dreams in career, in hobby, and in that thing called life. My guest today is Scott Dadich.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
I got dad itch.
Dad itch.
How many times have you said that? A million?
Yeah, like your dad has an itch. Yes.
We all have these we got these little things to describe our world.
You'd be surprised.
I bet.
Folks don't always get it. That's all right.
So for the folks at home, why don't you pretend that they've never met you before, although I know they're familiar with your work because of Wired fame, but describe yourself to the folks at home.
Yeah, I have a design background for the last 11 years. I was the editor-in-chief of Wired. I'm sorry, I was at Wired for 11 years. I was the editor-in-chief for 4 of those.
Yeah, the person who was there for the other 7 is like, I want my 7 years, damn
Chris
it.
Anderson is
great guy.
Pounding his fist. No, I was actually the creative director for 5 years, and then went off to run digital development at Conde Nast, where I worked with all of the brands and basically helped them develop digital strategies, starting with the iPad and then the iPhone and into web, and then came back 4 years ago as editor-in-chief. And
was that a nice return? Did you like ride in on the white horse?
That was fun. That was fun. With so many colleagues and friends that I was so excited to come back and work with in the new capacity as an editor, which was really cool. So did that, and then just earlier this year have launched my own company with a very dear friend of mine, and we are now Godfrey Dadich Partners, and design and strategy and content firm.
Nice.
It's fun. We're having a blast.
So was there a bridge that had to be made between Conde Nast and your new thing? Did Wired serve some purpose in there besides coming back and running around with a bunch of colleagues that you'd had before and doing some work that was familiar to you? Or?
Yeah, about 10, 11 years at that company, you see a lot, you learn a lot, you do a lot. Okay. And it felt like for me in 2016, getting to work with the president, getting to do that issue with him that he guest edited in November, really felt like a watershed moment for me, and it felt like I had done what I had come to do at Wired. It was sort of like
what?
That was pretty good. I think it's time to hand it over to the next team and next leaders there, and for me to go off and do my own thing. So my friend Patrick and I have been talking about this for a good while, and it sort of seemed like the right time to go off and chart a new course and be our own bosses. So it was a tough decision, but I feel really good about it.
How long have you been out?
Well, technically,
we're talking about like it's jail.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial world, it might feel like that, but how long have you been out?
I've got a couple more weeks at Wired, and the new company launches on February 1st.
And is that public yet?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about that issue, the one that you feel like the watershed moment, getting to work with the president on a curated, edited issue. Yeah. What's it like? How did it come together?
Yeah.
So the folks at home who are listening to this they're kind of in 2 camps. Well, they're all generally media savvy, but there are people who identify as creatives, and we want to take their vision and mission of what's possible from a 1 to a 10. Give them actionable insights, and then there's the whole other cross section of folks that are listening who are curious and they're trying to go from 0 to 1, and hearing stories about familiar brands and people, and then the journeys behind them, that really motivates those people. So just for a little context,
totally helpful.
As you think about those 2 things, like what was your experience like working on this episode, and the challenges, the wins, the losses?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us the story.
So every year we try and reach out to a Wired hero, someone who we think is doing remarkable work in one form or another, creatively, field of science, technology, and in this case it felt like the right time to go to the White House and ask the president if he would guest edit the issue. It was a real long shot, but we had some friends there and actually started talking about it at a moment when there was some alignment about what he wanted to talk about at the end of his presidency, and also chart a path forward. And Wired is very much about what the future looks like. And we always try and look around that corner and have some assessment of how the worlds of science and technology and design are going to come together. And for him, it really struck a nerve in terms of the dawning world of artificial intelligence, what that's going to mean. And it really allowed us to build a series of stories around his particular interests. And so we got a green light in the summer and started working with him and the team at the White House to actually build a roster, build a series of stories and lineups that he went through and actually hand approved. And so we went out and made assignments, photography, illustrators, writers, and our team of editors actually worked through the entire lineup and then built that issue around his hopes and dreams. And then he and I got to sit down with Joey Ito and have an hour-long conversation about artificial intelligence and self-driving cars and the ethics of technology. It was one of the most incredible moments of my life.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular.
What surprised you the most about that experience? Either the experience of making that particular issue, working with the president directly. What was something that was really surprising that you didn't anticipate?
You see his sense of humor manifest at moments like the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but he's really funny and really sharp. On and sharp, which isn't really surprising, but it's really gratifying when you experience it in real life. The other thing that's, again, probably not surprising, you hope and you understand that how much he's got on his plate, how many issues cross his desk on a daily basis, but for him to be so genuinely studied and interested in aspects of artificial intelligence in particular and how that's going to show up in our lives, he's really into it and really can geek out on it and go deep on it. It's not something that he just read a briefing paper on and wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I want to share an experience. So I also have had the good fortune over the last 9 months to work directly with the principals of the White House, the POTUS, VP, and FLOTUS, and on a couple of different issues, probably most of the time with Biden. But I've made it a career of sitting down with people who are the best in the world.
Yep.
Richard Branson sat in that chair, the people who we all, and you get a good sense of like what they're really like, and the sense of humor that you talk about with the president. And I will confess that humans are humans, and when you're eyeball to eyeball with someone, it's like we're all the same.
Exactly.
But the respect that I gleaned from dealing with those three characters, it's next level. I mean, just like
really
the level.
is.
When Joe Biden grabbed you by the shoulders and said, "Chase, we need you," I'm like, "Fuck it, anything. I'll jump off a bridge. I'll drive through a brick wall.
What do you need, Joe?
Anything."
I got you.
So articulate, so well studied, and to have that time speaking about something like AI, that had to just be.
Yeah, it was mind blowing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like that closed a chapter, or was that? I mean. Or was it opening the next thing? Did you see where you wanted to go professionally beyond that?
It did feel like the latter. It did feel, there was a sense of accomplishment there and pride in what my colleagues and I had been able to accomplish. And the fact that he is a reader of Wired and likes what we've been doing was really gratifying. I think in a sense that opened up that next door.
Yeah.
And the other thing that had sort of clicked for me, I spent most of 2016 working on a television series for Netflix called Abstract that I created and collaborated with.
I just saw the trailer for you.
It's pretty
on
cool.
his phone, you guys. It's amazing.
It's pretty cool. I worked with two filmmakers, Morgan Neville, who won the Oscar for 20 Feet from Stardom, and Dave O'Connor, one of the executive producers on the new series Mars on National Geographic. Yeah,
I can't get my wife Kate to stop watching. I'm like, it's bedtime.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful show.
Oh, the toggling back and forth between the future and current day. Yeah, it's epic.
So Dave and Morgan and I built out the team and created 8 one-hour episodes about creativity and about design. And working, again, that one-on-one with some of the world's greatest designers, architects, Tinker Hatfield at Nike, Ralph Gilles at Fiat Chrysler, as Devlin, the stage designer for Beyonce and Kanye. You see their stories emerge and you see that drive, and it was a lesson for me in thinking about the risks that they had all taken, and that being close to them and understanding their process and watching and filming with them it was a big inspiration to me to take that step myself and think about what would be my next path as a designer and creator and filmmaker and editor. And it was the moment it felt like it was time for me to step out.
So you said something that almost everybody who's been on this show says inadvertently at some point, which is they describe themselves using about 6 or 7 words. You were a designer, a storyteller, editor. In the last 10 minutes, you've probably said 6 or 7 of those different things. Talk to me about that. I think it's the first time in the history of the world that we can start to think of ourselves in those terms. How do you think about it?
I always felt in school that was a process that pushed you into one of those labels, and you had to pick, and you would be defined by that for forevermore. I remember thinking, wow, when I get a card that says graphic designer on it, that's it, I'm locked in for life. But I learned very quickly in my first job at Texas Monthly from my editor there, Evan Smith. He taught me how to be a journalist and how to write and how to edit. And I realized it activated the same parts of my brain, that I could think about problem solving in the same kinds of frameworks, but the outcomes would be different, the product would be different. And I think that's sort of what's happened with me as an editor at Wired and now working in film and long-form film. The skill sets and the neurons that get fired are the same. It's just that the outcomes are different. And that's really what I enjoy about living in a time like today, that we actually are afforded the liberties to move beyond and into different creative outputs depending on interest, depending on opportunity, depending on the need of the story itself.
Yeah, it's to me, it's the most exciting time in the history of the world to be alive and considered, or to be able to consider yourself a creator. The gatekeepers are gone. You have access to these crazy tools because of technology. And we can finally escape these monikers of my background is in photography, and I was like, yeah, but when I write a couple of books, and then when then I make a couple of films, and then this is really the second company I've built, the CreativeLive, with 100 talented people who go to work here every day. Like, how am I a thing?
How did this happen?
How am I a thing? And at the same time, I feel like it keeps myself and the people that I know who identify with this fresh and invigorated. And somebody who's been on this show, a guy named James Altucher, I don't know if you're familiar with James' works, a writer, great guy, and an entrepreneur. He referenced some science that said that the human can have sort of like 5 projects going. And you've heard of Dunbar's number with the number of people that you can have in your community. Well, he talks about the ideal number of projects being 5. And I kind of feel like I have maybe 5 personalities, might be a stretch, but identities and as a creator, and to be able to bounce back and forth. To me, it's like a new power that we're all afforded or been granted, and the stuff that used to happen without identity is now able to be out in the light.
I think that's right.
How has your background doing all of those things, writing, editing, that you said, how has that parlayed now into film?
The fundamental unit there for me was story, that you have a subject with a true tale, and using those tools, using those technologies that even a couple of years ago we didn't have available to us to create and envision that person's narrative path, and then designing the experience around it. So thinking about, well, our budget's going to allow 10 days of shooting with this individual. How do we translate a whole lifetime of experience into an hour film? I loved that challenge, and that was really spurred on by Morgan and Dave, and actually working with our subjects, who we also call co-creators of the film, because we needed to elicit how they would design their story and how they think visually, and what happens when they have creative thought. What do they see? How do they manifest that on page? And one of the most amazing things about it, they all draw. That every single one, no matter if they're designing a stage show or a sneaker, they all draw. And that tool was really helpful to us in learning to envision how we'd put that together. And we could use fancy tools and drones and great lenses and amazing cameras, but fundamentally it was about ideas and putting those stories together in really interesting ways.
That's beautiful. I want to know what other common themes. This is about, in large part, the show is about trying to share information so that people can unlock their own, unlock that. And that's the foundation of CreativeLive as a company, is to help people do that through learning from the world's top experts. So in juxtaposing those ideas, what were the things beyond drawing that were commonalities across all the subjects in
abstract?
the series?
Yeah,
in abstract.
They, interestingly, and I have met designers who don't do what I do, but I see things, I see shapes and color manipulate themselves, and it may not even be that I'm working on a shape or a color problem. I maybe constructing a paragraph or working with an editor on a headline. I do sort of see these, what I call design hallucinations. And almost every person in our series encountered something similar, that they see things manipulate themselves into a finished state, and then they go and work against those problems and try and manipulate and get this thing out of your head and onto the page, or in the form of a room design or a sneaker. And that was a pretty consistent finding throughout. And they go about it in different ways, but it's that mix of travel and experiences and working with other creative people that's been really the big driver of getting those things out of the mind and into the world.
I got chills when you said that, because that's almost exactly how I mean, these guys know it. I've drawn. I can't actually communicate without some sort of a pen or like it's painful for me to try and have to explain something that I'm seeing, whether it's a set build or whether it's a shot or a boom move in a moving picture, without being able I either need to do the thing myself or draw it so that the people who are in the room can understand it.
I'm exactly the same way.
And I feel infinitely constrained if I can't, and I feel like a pain, and I see things moving on their own. That's phenomenal. I've never heard someone describe it as accurately as what happens in my brain as you just did.
It's kind of scary when you can tap into that and understand them. But
I'm going to close my mouth. I literally just recognize my mouth is open. Like,
well, yeah, that. I think I caught on to it. My CFO at my new company says he speaks spreadsheet, and he feels the same way about an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So I understand feeling the constraint of it.
Wow. So can I... Well, this is going to come out after the series comes out, this particular episode. So I would like to describe what I saw. And then you tell me how. I try and create some visual language through this audio. There's some visual aspects to it here. But so it's a series of 1-hour shows about individual creators. It shows process in a way that I think, and you've done it beautifully and very visually.
Thank you.
But that's a thing that I think is going to be, I'm projecting that's going to be very powerful, because so many people, what I call it the black box. People, they see the individual and then they see the finished piece, but it's this black box of sort of, I don't know, and social and collaborative and widely accessible, distributable tools and things that we have that we didn't have for a long time have made it infinitely easier to understand that process. But was that a goal of the project when you set out?
Absolutely. One of the things that we said and that I wanted to accomplish with the series in particular was to demystify the world around us, that designers shape just about everything we touch and see and experience, whether these chairs or the car we drove here to get to the studio. And that demystifying process was really important to us. We wanted to unravel that. And the core principle of the show is that design is just decision making. Designers are people who put one decision in front of another, red or blue, or the kind of code they're using, or if a curve should go like this or like that. And to put those in context and to show those decisions happen in real time, whether through verite or through animation or a telling back and forth between two people, those details and those decisions have import. They matter. And if you can show them, and you will peel back the scales from people's eyes, and they can't help but look at the world in a new way. When you see Ralph, the head of design for Fiat Chrysler, and has all these incredible brands that he oversees the look and feel and of every aspect of the car, from the click of the knob to the shape of the wheel. He designed the 300, the Chrysler 300, iconic design. to see him articulate that with his team and have such a huge influence, you now can't literally drive down the street. I can't drive down the street and see Ralph. Oh, look, Ralph did that. Oh, look at that thing. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's an Eames quote, the details aren't the details are the product.
Yes, yes.
I think that's so insightful and so simple at the same time, but so insightful.
I love that quote.
The thing is also beautiful. I mean, like, not just the camera moves, but the design of it. I mean, I can see your imprint on there, the color. You know, it's got this beautiful. Is there something that you modeled off of? What was some other inspirations for the show?
There's definitely some Wired DNA in the typography and in the way that we've used graphics, again, to sort of draw out some of those design hallucinations. If a subject was describing something that she saw, we would try and go and make a little animation of shape and color to do that. That's definitely a Wired characteristic and something that we brought through. Billy Sorrentino, actually, the former creative director of Wired, oversaw the graphics, so you'll see a bit of that DNA in there.
Nice.
And it made a big difference. But we designed the frame, we designed the show, we designed the narrative structures, and so it was very important to us that we adhered to the heuristics that we set out when we created the show document. We actually designed a book that we gave to all of our directors and our directors of photography so that they understood that every aspect needed to be considered. We would want to collaborate with them to create those frames and create those camera moves and sequences, but that it did have to be considered.
Wow. So, like, let's just get some logistics out now. Where is it going to be? How do people find it? Like, you got a URL for the page that is, like, give us a little context around it.
It's the easiest thing ever. You get yourself the Netflix, you turn it on and search for Abstract, the Art of Design. It will be in 190 countries, 22 different languages. It's a global release, all on February 10th.
Wow.
So it will be hard to miss.
Yes, I love that. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's huge. Let's talk a little bit theoretical for a second.
Absolutely.
Around creativity, around entrepreneurship, around the way humans package ideas, they put like things together. I want to know, when you think about creativity, I say creativity with a small c, I mean the actual crafts of design, of photography, of filmmaking. And when I say creativity with the large C, when I juxtapose those things, what comes to mind for you?
I do go back to that moment of decision making, of making those decisions that are the details, the discovery details, the particular grade of a color move in a photograph or motion picture, all the way to the kerning pairs between two letters. I find that those little things end up empowering the really big moments because they just accrue. And you're able to assert yourself or assert a team's effort and see give and take and see difference and commonality between those moments where you and I can disagree about how far apart those two letters need to exist, but there's a discovery when we have that conversation. And if those build up over time and they allow for bigger things to happen because trust emerges, because people talk to one another, there's communication, and I've found that I learn the most when I'm in those kinds of scenarios, when I'm working with people, again, over the structure of a paragraph or a colorway, and I find that same sort of neural framework gets activated, that I feel something, and a coach of mine tells me and has taught me to pay attention to those feelings. When I'm doing that, I feel a certain way in my body that is different than when I'm slumped in a meeting or going through that spreadsheet. And so it has something to do with the way that I'm built as a creative person, but learning that tool set is also really important and enabling in the creative process, at least for me.
Let's talk to the 0 to 1 folks, the folks who have not identified as a creative, and I've spent, I guess, my last few years certainly trying to help those folks understand that there's a creator in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
When you look across the plains, paint a picture here. When you look out there in the world and you see folks that identify and people who don't identify as creative or not, Do you have a message for either group, or specifically interested in helping inspire the folks who were told their whole life they weren't creative and they're trying to break out and find something?
I would pull out a lesson from the show and drawing. I think there's something really liberating, and it doesn't have to be good, it doesn't have to be representative, it can be purely abstract doodling. That to a person, every one of these subjects had activated their creative output by putting some instrument that had ink or graphite in it against a piece of paper. And that exploratory process, that there's something that happens in our minds that expands creative possibility when you doodle. And it's incredible to unlock that. I think that the bar is low, it costs nothing to do, and it certainly is a way to explore what happens inside of you when you do start that process.
Yeah, I think the idea of process, the word that you just finished, was the fact that it's not a destination, that it's a habit.
That's
It's
exactly
like
right.
letting it out.
Christoph Niemann talks a lot about this, that there aren't these moments of creative inspiration. There are no lightning bolts that come down. It's practice.
Yeah.
It's like a sport. You have to go out and rehearse and go to practice and do it a lot. And it is something that you must continue to improve on. He talks about a creative bar fight between the 10-year-ago version of himself and the version today. And he said, I'm confident that I kick my own ass. It's fun to think about that it is a muscle that, in some sense, that you can strengthen.
Let's talk about advice. Some people are wary to give it. Other people have a hard time receiving it. That's one of the things that I want this episode. You've done so much. You've built so many things. At the same time, I hear sort of this rebirth and a bunch of new energy coming into your world because of the show and your new business. Advice to people who are following in your footsteps or thinking about it.
Pay attention to the feelings that you have inside of you. I was contemplating this choice to chart out on my own this year, and my wife
Leaving a big post.
a big post. My dream job, in every sense, getting that job felt like that was it. I could do that for the rest of my life. But I discovered over those years that I do have a lot more in me that I want to go out and create, and I like building teams, and I like building things out of nothing. And paying attention to that feeling inside, and all credit to my wife, she gave me El Luna's terrific book, The Should and Must.
Elle's going to be here in about an hour or 90 minutes.
I have to thank her. I have to thank her.
She's incredible. She's been on this show before. I love her.
This book gave me the courage to think about my must, and paying attention to that feeling about what I needed to do and what I had to do was really important. And if there's any advice that I can offer, small in comparison to what Elle has done, but paying attention to that feeling inside is really crucial. And I looked back at the moments when I stepped out of that comfort zone and felt that excitement again, and every single one of them led me to great things because of the growth, because of the people that I met, because of the places I've been able to travel and see and have conversations like this. And every single time that I felt like that, it was a big leap forward for me. So it's really gratifying to be able to recognize that, and the more people can pay attention to it, the better.
Yeah, isn't it sort of weird? Like I don't know, I think it falls under the category of self-awareness because it is a process, and I have learned to recognize it. I talk about it as my best quality is instinct. And it's not about seeing, I think people think about it like, oh, instinct's in the market, and oh, you saw that online creative education was going to be interesting 6 years ago. No, it was like, it's recognizing something's changing in me that says that's pulling me to do one thing. I feel resistance, I feel these other things, conflict, even just confessionally. I've confessed a lot on this show, but confessionally, like, it was very hard. I was bound for professional soccer. And then when I decided that wasn't it, out of fear, I turned to the world and said, oh, what should I do? And they said, if you're smart and hardworking, you should be a doctor or a lawyer. And that was, I spent, I don't know, $100,000 in several years of my life down a path that was everybody else's path. And all of that was in radical violation to what was going on in here.
Yep.
So when I'm using the word intuition, is that, in that example, is that what you mean by listening to your feelings in here? Or is there some different permutation? Or is intuition smaller than your feelings? Or is it bigger? Talk to me a little bit more about it.
When you say the word intuition, I think about that gut, heart, head alignment. When all three of those are telling you the same thing, to me, that sort of speaks to that moment of intuition where I can feel the direction, the purpose of it, the alignment of it, that feels different than when one of those isn't there. Your head tells you something, but your heart, you want to go eat the ice cream. You know, it's like, I really know that I shouldn't, but...
I pretty much want to eat the ice cream right now. That sounds
pretty
good.
much, pretty much. You can divorce intuition from the ice cream.
Thank you. Phew.
That's sort of the way I think about it, though.
I think that's some fantastic advice. How about habits? Like, I'm interested in, there's some common habits you cited amongst the people in the show of, putting pen or pencil to paper. Either and or both other habits that you've noticed across all the subjects of the series and or yours personally. Like, what are some habits that you feel like have been successful or helped you be successful?
Certainly in the series, all of these folks have strong pursuits and skills in things that are not design, whether it's skateboarding or playing the piano or violin, that they're all passionate about creating in a venue that is not what their work habit is. For me, I love to read, I love science fiction, and I find that I can sort of spark up and get those neurons firing when I read great science fiction.
3 science fiction books.
7 Eves, Neil Stephenson last year. It came out 2 years ago. I read that last summer, though. It blew my mind. I'm reading 2312 right now, Kim Stanley Robinson, incredible, and The Martian. Just awesome books.
Just some nuggets there in the middle of the show for you all. So something else outside of the passion that you can turn to exercise. Got it. It's very helpful. Don't do's.
Don't do's. I think this sort of reflexive idea that you have to go sit in front of the computer or whatever your work tool machine is to go and crack the problem. I'm just going to go in and solve this and get it done. That I actually find that going out to do something else, whether it is read or go cycling or find some way to connect with the earth in a really, like a hike, be out, smell the air, I feel a lot better and find solutions to creative problems a lot more quickly.
That has been almost a universal on this show when I ask people. It's like, get away, like stop doing the thing that you're blocked at. You're just burning cycles and you're probably going to come up with a shitty solution. And if you're tired enough, you'll call it done versus the opposite if you've got energy and you get some clarity from being away.
Or even overwork it. The other risk of just pushing past the solution.
Yeah,
that
it was
that is
3 iterations ago.
You had it already. Like, call it a day and go for a hike.
God, that's such good advice. You could save some serious pain by listening to this man. So what other projects are you working on? I'm excited to hear. And we want to focus on the Netflix series. I think that's obviously a critical piece of what we talked about here. Get some other stuff in the works or things you can talk about. Presumably there's some things you can't. But.
Yeah, the big design project for the year is designing our agency and designing the structure, the home of it. We're actually looking for a new office right now. We have about 35 folks working for us, and we're looking to grow that
35
this year.
35 people already?
Exactly. So Patrick's practice was Godfrey Q, and he built that over the past 14 years. Great advertising strategy, brand architecture firm, and so that works. So I'm joining forces with him and that team, and we're adding talent and looking for new designers and filmmakers and producers.
What hood do you want to be in?
I think Jackson Square sounds pretty cool. We've been looking over there, but fairly central, something around Market Street. Yeah. But we want some creative space, some brick and a big open ceiling like this, and some space where we can grow. So designing the space, designing the work that we're going to do, and designing the relationships between ourselves and our potential clients, our existing clients, the places that we want to go. So there's a lot to do, and but it's really it doesn't feel like work. I kind of can't believe that people pay me to do this.
Yeah, I get
it's
to
kind of
start
crazy.
to build the foundation of a thing. So you casually interjected in there the intersection of should and must, the book by El Luna. Any other books that you feel like have cracked open some stuff besides the science fiction that we already talked about?
You know, I read, this is dry, but I forget, it's the HBR on managing people. That is a great book for any young leader, anyone looking to grow. I've given that to many colleagues. I had it given to me, and it's a really terrific tool book. It's very practical. But in terms of creative leadership, Ed Catmull's book is without peer.
Yeah, former chief of Disney, right? Disney.
He's at Disney now, but a co-founder of Pixar.
Oh, Pixar. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And was at Lucasfilm before that. And the name of the book is escaping me right now, but holy shit, it is a great book. Ed is an amazing, amazing man. And the way that he talks about creative decision making and working with big groups of creative folks to achieve spectacular results like Toy Story and Finding Dory and Bug's Life, and telling those stories of how those things came into the world over a 4-year process, thinking about from the start of a story to going to the theater, having 4 years to affect every minuscule decision that he and John Lasseter built that company around. It's breathtaking. So I can't recommend that book enough.
Solid recommendation.
Imagination Inc. I'm gonna
Creativity Inc.
Creativity Inc. Yes, thank you, thank you.
We're in this together. I dropped it like I had it the whole time, but I was processing when you were doing this. I was going through my bookshelf. I'm like, I can see it. You said the ink, and that got us there.
There we go.
Parting words? Anything that you'd like to share with some folks who are like just curious and passionate and hungry and of all ranges and walks of life? Like, you've clearly got some great stuff in your backpack of all that you've accomplished.
I'd say be willing to learn, go in humble, and understand that just about everyone has something to teach you. When you put in the hours and you trust in your fellow colleagues and creatives, that only good things can happen. That exchange of ideas is everything.
It's so invigorating.
Everything good that has happened to me has come through that kind of a process.
Incredible. I have nothing else to add. That was awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for
really
having me.
Appreciate it.
Real
it's
pleasure.
And shout out to Print Magazine for helping get us together.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to that coming out, and congratulations on the series. I saw the trailer, you guys. It is fresh. It's beautiful. Congrats.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Look forward to it.